10 years ago, Elena Moore proposed to the man she loved, only to face heartbreak and humiliation when Aaron Bennett rejected her, swayed by his privileged family's disapproval. Now, Elena is a successful attorney, while Aaron's life has crumbled. Desperate to save his family's estate, Aaron turns to Elena for help. But as old wounds resurface, and secrets long buried come to light, Elena is torn between seeking justice or offering the forgiveness she never received. Will the truth about their past rewrite their future forever? The garden was in full bloom, with roses and lilies adding vibrant color to the evening. Lanterns cast a soft, romantic glow over the neatly trimmed hedges and stone pathways. Elena Moore stood at the center of this picturesque scene, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Tonight was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one she had envisioned for months. Aaron Bennett, with his sandy brown hair and charming smile, approached her with a confident stride. He had been the center of her world for so long, and tonight, she was prepared to take their relationship to the next level. "Elena," Aaron began, taking her hand as they walked through the garden, "this is beautiful. What's the occasion?" Elena took a deep breath, her nerves settling as she looked into his blue eyes. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you, Aaron. Something important." They stopped by a secluded bench, the soft sound of a nearby fountain creating a serene backdrop. Elena's heart pounded as she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. She opened it to reveal a sparkling diamond ring. "Aaron, I love you more than anything," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" Aaron's face froze for a moment, the confident demeanor giving way to visible discomfort. He looked at the ring, then back at Elena, his expression shifting from surprise to unease. "Elena, he started, but his voice faltered. Elena's heart sank as she saw the hesitation in his eyes. "What's wrong?" "Aaron, please," she urged, trying to keep her voice steady. "Say something." Aaron looked away, struggling to find the right words. "Elena, you know how much I care about you. But I'm not sure if this is the right step for us." Elena's face went pale, her fingers tightening around the ring box. "What are you saying?" I can't," Aaron said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "My family, they have expectations. And this, our relationship, it's just too complicated." Elena stared at him, the words cutting deep. "So, you're rejecting me because of your family's expectations?" Aaron looked pained, but he nodded. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't go against my family." The reality of his rejection hit Elena like a tidal wave. Tears welled up in her eyes as she fought to keep her composure. "I see. I guess that's your answer." Aaron looked regretful but didn't reach out to comfort her. Elena took a step back, closing the ring box with a decisive snap. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Aaron." With that, she turned and walked away, the once beautiful garden now feeling cold and empty. The lantern's light seemed dimmer as she made her way out, her heart shattered. Years had passed since that fateful night, and Elena Moore had transformed her life completely. Now, in her sleek, modern law office, she exuded confidence and authority. The glass walls and minimalist decor reflected her professional success and personal growth. Elena sat at her desk, reviewing case files with meticulous attention. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. It was a message from a friend inviting her to a charity event. "Not tonight," she murmured, tapping the message away. "I've got work to do." Her assistant, Sarah, knocked and entered, holding a file. "Elena, here are the updated documents for the Johnson case." "Thank you, Sarah," Elena said, taking the file and glancing through it. "Make sure we're prepared for tomorrow's hearing." Sarah nodded. "Will do. By the way, there's a call from Aaron Bennett. He's asking for a meeting." Elena's hand paused over the file, a flash of surprise crossing her face. Aaron Bennett? Are you sure? Yes, it's him, Sarah confirmed. He sounded quite urgent. Elena's mind raced. The name brought back a flood of memories, memories she had buried but never quite forgotten. She nodded, trying to mask her unease. Set up a meeting for tomorrow. I'll be ready. Sarah left, and Elena sat in silence, her thoughts drifting back to Aaron. The pain of his rejection had faded into a distant ache, but the prospect of facing him again stirred old emotions. The next day, Aaron Bennett stood nervously in the lobby of Elena's law office. The grandeur of the space seemed a world away from the crumbling Bennett estate. His sandy brown hair was now thinning, and his once charming demeanor was replaced by a weariness that spoke of years of struggle. When Sarah escorted him into Elena's office, Aaron looked around, taking in the sleek surroundings with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "Elena," Aaron said, extending a hand. "It's been a long time." Elena shook his hand, her expression polite but guarded. "Aaron. Please, have a seat." Aaron sat down, his eyes scanning the room nervously. "I know it's been years, but I need your help. My family's estate is on the brink of foreclosure. We've lost everything." Elena took a seat behind her desk, her gaze steady. "And you think I can help you?" Aaron nodded, his voice filled with desperation. "I'm at my wit's end. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm hoping you can help me navigate this mess. I don't have anyone else to turn to." Elena studied him, the weight of their past hanging between them. "Why should I help you, Aaron? You rejected me when I needed you most." Aaron's face showed a flicker of guilt. "I know. And I'm deeply sorry for that. But this isn't about us. It's about saving what's left of my family's legacy." Elena's eyes narrowed. "And why should I believe this is genuine and not just another manipulation?" Aaron's shoulders slumped. "Because I've lost everything. I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for a chance to fix what I can. I can't do it without your help." Elena remained silent, weighing his request. The pain of his past actions and the urgency of his current situation created a complex emotional landscape. A few days later, as Elena reviewed Aaron's financial documents, she stumbled upon something unexpected. Amid the tangled mess of records, she found a document detailing a series of questionable transactions that hinted at a deeper, more personal connection. Elena's heart raced as she pieced together the information. The transactions pointed to a hidden connection between Aaron's family and her own, linked to the financial difficulties her family had faced years ago. She picked up the phone and called Aaron. "Aaron, we need to talk. I've found something in your family's financial records that concerns me." Aaron sounded alarmed. "What did you find?" Elena's voice was steady but serious. "There are documents here that suggest your family's actions had a direct impact on my own family's financial struggles. I need to know the full story." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I didn't know about those transactions. My family kept a lot from me." Elena could hear the strain in his voice. "We need to discuss this in person. I need full transparency if we're going to move forward." Aaron agreed, and they scheduled a meeting to go over the details. When Aaron arrived at Elena's office for their meeting, his face was drawn with worry. He sat down across from her, his hands clasped tightly. Elena placed the documents on the desk between them. "These records show that your family's financial maneuvers were directly linked to decisions that affected my family." Aaron's face turned pale as he reviewed the documents. "I had no idea. My mother, she was always controlling everything behind the scenes. She must have done this without my knowledge." Elena's eyes were filled with a mix of anger and sadness. "The fact that you didn't know doesn't change the damage that was done. But it does change how I see this situation." Aaron looked up, his eyes pleading. "I'm not the same person I was back then. I'm asking for your help not just because I need it, but because I want to make things right." I've faced the consequences of my family's actions and am ready to do whatever it takes to fix things. Elena took a deep breath, her anger giving way to a reluctant empathy. I'll help you, Aaron. But this isn't about forgiveness, it's about facing the truth and making things right. I need to know that you're committed to that. Aaron nodded, his expression solemn. I am. Thank you, Elena. As the meeting concluded, Elena felt a mix of relief and apprehension. Helping Aaron would not be easy, and the emotional scars from their past were still fresh. But the truth had changed everything, and with it, the possibility of redemption and justice. The cafe was busy but intimate, with the warm smell of coffee and pastries filling the air. Elena sat at a small table near the window, watching as the city moved around her. She hadn't touched her cup, her mind elsewhere as she replayed the phone call from Aaron. The door jingled as it opened, and she looked up to see him enter. Aaron seemed smaller now, his once confident presence dimmed. His sandy brown hair was starting to thin, and the worry lines etched into his face told a story of years of hardship. Elena, Aaron said as he approached, offering a hesitant smile. She gave a curt nod. Aaron. He pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down, the tension between them palpable. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of their shared past hanging in the air. Thank you for meeting me, Aaron finally said, his voice soft but filled with a kind of desperation. Elena kept her expression neutral. I didn't do it for you. I want to hear what you have to say, but don't expect me to offer anything right away. Aaron nodded, his hands clasped together as if he was holding on for dear life. I understand. I need your help, Elena. My family's estate is falling apart, and I've lost everything. Her eyes narrowed as she leaned back in her chair. And you think I'll help you, after everything? Aaron winced, the guilt evident in his expression. I know I have no right to ask, but I don't have anyone else. You're the only one I could think of who could fix this. Elena shook her head, her anger simmering just beneath the surface. I was the last person you thought of when it came to us. Why should I help you now? Aaron looked down at the table, his voice breaking slightly. Because I'm sorry, Elena. For everything. I know I hurt you, and I'll never be able to undo that. But I'm asking for your help now because I have no one else to turn to. Elena stared at him, the memories of their past rushing back, his rejection, the humiliation she had felt. Part of her wanted to walk out of the cafe and never look back, but another part of her couldn't deny the flicker of pity she felt seeing Aaron like this. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. I need time to think about it. This isn't something I can decide right now. Aaron nodded, relief washing over his face. Thank you, Elena. That's all I'm asking for. As they walked out of the cafe, the crisp evening air wrapped around them, but the tension between them was far from eased. Elena felt the weight of the conversation they just had, her emotions swirling. I've thought about that night a lot, Aaron said, breaking the silence as they strolled toward her car. The night you proposed. Elena stiffened but kept walking. It's in the past, Aaron. Maybe for you, he said softly. But I made a mistake. I was scared of what my family would think, of what society expected. But I've regretted it ever since. She stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. You rejected me, Aaron. You made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like what we had wasn't worth the fight. Aaron's face fell. I know. And I hate that I was too much of a coward to stand up for us. For you. Elena's chest tightened as she remembered the hurt, the humiliation of that moment. Well, it's too late to change that now, isn't it? Aaron took a step closer, his voice filled with regret. If I could go back and do it differently, I would. Elena looked away, her emotions too raw to confront. That's the thing, Aaron, you can't go back. And I'm not the same woman I was then. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of their past heavy between them. Finally, Elena turned and walked away, leaving Aaron standing alone. The following week, Aaron arrived at Elena's law office. He looked out of place in the sleek, modern space, his worn-down appearance a stark contrast to the polished surroundings. Elena sat behind her desk, reviewing the documents he had brought with him. "These are the financial records for the estate," Aaron said, his voice strained. "It's worse than I thought." Elena scanned the papers, her expression unreadable. "You've let this go for too long. If you had come to me sooner, maybe we could have salvaged more." Aaron shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I know. I didn't think it would get this bad. But now, I don't have a choice." Elena set the papers down and looked at him. "If I agree to help you, Aaron, it won't be easy. And it won't be cheap. My time is valuable, and I won't put my reputation on the line for a lost cause." Aaron nodded, his face pale. "I understand. I'll do whatever you need." Elena leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "This is business, Aaron. Whatever personal history we have doesn't matter here. If I take this case, you'll follow my lead and my terms. Understood?" Aaron swallowed hard and nodded again. "Yes, understood." She studied him for a moment, still unsure if she was making the right decision. "I'll draft up a contract. We'll start with an initial review of your assets and debts. If I think there's a chance to save this estate, we'll move forward." Aaron let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "Thank you, Elena. I don't know how to." "I don't want your gratitude," she interrupted, her voice sharp. "This isn't about you, Aaron. It's about doing my job." That night, Elena sat in her apartment, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating the living room. The documents Aaron had given her were spread across the table, but her mind wasn't on the case. Instead, her thoughts drifted back to the night that had changed everything between them. She could still see it clearly, the garden lit by lanterns, the ring in her hand, the look of hesitation on Aaron's face. She had been so sure of their love, so certain that they could face whatever challenges came their way. But Aaron's rejection had shattered that illusion, leaving her heartbroken and humiliated. Elena clenched her fists, the memories bringing back the sting of betrayal. How could he ask for her help now, after everything? She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. She was a professional, and she wouldn't let her personal feelings interfere with her work. But no matter how hard she tried, the past lingered, casting a shadow over everything. The next morning, Elena met Aaron at her office again. She handed him the contract, her demeanor cold and businesslike. "This outlines the terms of my involvement in your case," she said, her voice firm. "If you agree to these terms, we can move forward." Aaron glanced over the contract, nodding as he read through it. "I agree." Elena watched him sign the document, her mind still conflicted. "I'm not doing this for you, Aaron. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do." Aaron looked up at her, his blue eyes filled with gratitude. "I know, Elena. And I won't forget it." She nodded curtly, turning back to her desk. "We'll start by reviewing your assets. There may still be a way to save the estate, but it's going to take time and effort." Aaron stood, the weight of the situation clear on his face. "Thank you. I'll do whatever it takes." As he left the office, Elena stared after him, her heart heavy with the unresolved feelings of their past. She had agreed to help him, but the wounds from his rejection were still raw. And as much as she tried to keep her emotions out of it, she knew that working with Aaron again would force her to confront the pain she had tried so hard to bury. Elena sat at her desk, papers spread across the surface, her brows furrowed as she studied the financial records Aaron had provided. She had been working late into the night, and the dim light from the lamp illuminated the room. Something wasn't adding up. The more she dug into the Bennett estate's finances, the more suspicious it became. Her eyes landed on a series of questionable transactions that didn't match the rest of the estate's records. Payments funneled through shadow accounts, withdrawals that didn't align with their stated purposes. Elena's heart raced as a nagging thought crept into her mind. Could this have something to do with her family's financial struggles years ago? She grabbed her phone and dialed Aaron. "Aaron, we need to meet. I found something." On the other end, Aaron's voice sounded weary. "What is it?" "There's something off about these records. I need to go over them with you. I'll come by the estate in the morning." The next day, Elena arrived at the Bennett estate, now looking more run-down than ever. Overgrown gardens and chipped paint on the once grand facade were physical reminders of how far the Bennetts had fallen. Aaron greeted her at the door, his face drawn with exhaustion. "What did you find?" Elena followed him inside, the musty smell of neglect filling the air. "There are transactions here that don't make sense, Aaron. They go back years, long before your recent troubles. Someone was moving large sums of money out of your estate through back channels." Aaron frowned, shaking his head. "That can't be right. My mother was in charge of the finances for a long time. She would have known." "That's exactly what worries me," Elena said, her voice tense. "I think your mother may have been involved in something bigger than we realized." At that moment, Grace Bennett entered the room, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the crumbling surroundings. Her icy blue eyes surveyed the scene, instantly assessing the situation. "What's going on here?" Elena faced Grace, holding up the records. "Care to explain these?" Grace's expression didn't waver, but there was a flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Those are private family matters. You have no business prying into them." Aaron's face paled. "Mother, what is this? What did you do?" Grace's composure cracked just slightly. "Everything I did was for the family. To protect us. You wouldn't understand, Aaron. You were always too soft." Elena stepped forward, her voice firm. "Your actions affected more than just your family. Those transactions, you sabotaged my family's finances years ago. We lost everything because of you." Grace's eyes narrowed. "It wasn't personal, dear. Just business. Your family got in the way of our expansion plans. I did what I had to do." Aaron stood frozen, his world crashing down around him as he realized the depth of his mother's betrayal. Later that evening, Aaron arrived at Elena's apartment, his face pale with shock and shame. He knocked on her door, and when she opened it, he could barely meet her gaze. "Elena. I didn't know," he said, his voice breaking. "I swear, I didn't know my mother was involved in this. I didn't know she did that to your family." Elena crossed her arms, her anger barely contained. "And what, Aaron? You expect me to believe you had no idea? That you were just an innocent bystander?" Aaron shook his head, his shoulders slumping. "I should have known. I should have asked more questions, but I trusted her. I never thought she would." "You never thought she would do what? Ruin lives for the sake of your family's empire?" Elena's voice was harsh, her words cutting through the air. "Well, she did. And my family paid the price." Aaron sank onto the couch, his face in his hands. "I don't know how to make this right. I don't even know if I can." Elena stood there for a moment, her emotions swirling. She had every right to walk away, to let Aaron deal with the mess his mother had created. But deep down, she could see the pain in his eyes. He wasn't the same man he had been all those years ago. Taking a deep breath, Elena softened her tone slightly. "I'll help you, Aaron. But this is for me, not for you. I need to see this through, to make sure the truth comes out." Aaron looked up, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you. I don't deserve it, but thank you." As the legal battle to save the Bennett estate continued, the case became high-profile, attracting media attention. The court dates were grueling, with every new piece of evidence bringing more tension to the already fraught situation. Elena sat in the courthouse, reviewing her notes before the next hearing. She could feel the weight of the case on her shoulders. This was more than just a legal matter now. It was personal. And the stakes were higher than ever. Aaron sat beside her, his hands nervously fidgeting. "Do you think we have a chance?" Elena didn't look up from her notes. "We have a chance, but it's slim. Your mother's actions have made this a much bigger problem than we anticipated." Aaron sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I never thought it would come to this." Elena finally looked up, her gaze steady. "You didn't think because you never questioned anything. That's why we're here." Before Aaron could respond, the bailiff called the court to order. The trial was about to begin. Late that night, after a particularly grueling day in court, Elena returned to her apartment, emotionally and physically drained. She collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. The weight of everything, the case, her past with Aaron, the betrayal of his mother, was overwhelming. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel the full extent of the pain she had been carrying. Tears welled up in her eyes as the memories of the past flooded back. The proposal, Aaron's rejection, the years she had spent building herself back up, all of it seemed so heavy now. Her phone buzzed on the table, but she ignored it. She wasn't ready to talk to anyone, not yet. For a long time, she sat there in the quiet, letting the emotions wash over her. She had always prided herself on being strong, on keeping her emotions in check. But tonight, she couldn't hold it in any longer. Eventually, the tears stopped, and Elena wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath. She knew what she had to do. She couldn't walk away from this, not yet. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. The Bennett estate was eerily quiet as Elena walked up the familiar path, her heels clicking against the cracked stone. The once grand mansion loomed ahead, its neglected state a reflection of the chaos that had engulfed the family. Elena took a deep breath as she knocked on the door, preparing herself for the confrontation she knew was coming. Aaron opened the door, his expression a mix of exhaustion and resignation. "Elena," he said softly, stepping aside to let her in. "I wasn't sure if you'd come." Elena walked inside, her eyes scanning the room as memories of her last visit flooded her mind. The estate had decayed even more since then, dust coated the once polished surfaces, and the air smelled of abandonment. "I found something," Elena said, holding up a folder. "And I think you need to hear it from me before this goes any further." Aaron looked at her, his brow furrowed. "What is it?" She handed him the folder, her expression hard. "Documents that prove your family's involvement in my family's financial ruin. Your mother knew exactly what she was doing." Aaron's hands trembled as he opened the folder and skimmed the pages, his face growing paler with each passing moment. I didn't know," he whispered, his voice hoarse. Elena crossed her arms, her gaze steady. "I know you didn't. But this doesn't change the fact that your family is responsible. I need to know where you stand, Aaron. Are you going to face this, or are you going to keep running?" He looked up at her, guilt and pain etched into his features. "I'll face it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right." Elena's heart clenched at his words, but she didn't let her emotions show. "Good. Because this isn't just about saving your estate anymore. This is about justice, for my family and for me." After their confrontation, Aaron sat alone in the study, staring at the evidence Elena had brought. The weight of his family's sins pressed down on him, suffocating in its intensity. He knew he had to do something, but the path ahead felt impossible. Later that evening, Aaron called Elena. She answered, her voice guarded. "Elena, please, I need to talk to you." "Face to face," Aaron said, his tone pleading. There was a long pause before she finally responded. "Fine. Meet me at the estate tomorrow." The next day, Aaron arrived at the Bennett estate, his heart pounding with uncertainty. Elena was already there, standing near the window, looking out at the overgrown gardens. "I've gone over the documents again," Aaron said, his voice trembling. "And I want to help you expose everything. My mother, the corruption, it all needs to come out." Elena turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Why now, Aaron? After all this time, why do you care?" He stepped closer, his voice raw with emotion. "Because I can't live with this anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything my family did was acceptable. I know I've failed you, and I've failed myself, but I need to make it right." Elena studied him, her walls still up. "You can't undo the past, Aaron. You rejected me when I needed you the most. You let your family's influence destroy what we had." "I know," he whispered, his eyes filling with regret. "And I'm sorry. But I can help you now. Let me help you expose the truth. Let me do something right, even if it's too late for us." Elena hesitated, her heart conflicted. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but could she trust him again? The next day, Elena sat at her desk in her law office, the crucial evidence Aaron had given her laid out in front of her. It was the key to everything, the proof she needed to turn the case in her favor. But using it came with a heavy cost. If she presented this evidence in court, Aaron's remaining family reputation would be completely destroyed. Elena's assistant, Sarah, knocked on the door and entered. "You look deep in thought," she said with a sympathetic smile. "I found something," Elena replied, her voice thoughtful. "Something that could win the case, but it would ruin Aaron's family for good." Sarah tilted her head. "And you're wondering if that's the right thing to do?" Elena nodded, staring at the documents. "I don't know if I'm doing this for justice or revenge. If I use this, it'll end everything for them." Sarah sat down across from her, her eyes gentle. "Elena, you've always fought for what's right. If exposing the truth is the right thing to do, then you shouldn't hesitate. But if you're doing this to hurt Aaron, then maybe it's worth reconsidering." Elena leaned back in her chair, her thoughts swirling. She had the power to destroy Aaron's family with this evidence, but what would that make her? Could she live with herself if she took that path? That evening, Elena sat in her apartment, her closest friends gathered around her. She had invited them over to help her navigate the moral dilemma she was facing. "I don't know what to do," Elena confessed, her voice wavering. "I have the evidence that will win the case, but if I use it, Aaron's family will be completely ruined." Her friend, Maya, leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "Do you think Aaron deserves to suffer for his family's mistakes?" Elena shook her head. "No, but his family hurt mine. They ruined us, and I've worked so hard to get to where I am today. Part of me wants to make them pay for what they did." Maya nodded, her voice calm. "But is that really you, Elena? The woman I know isn't driven by revenge. She's driven by justice." Elena sighed, feeling the weight of her decision pressing down on her. "I don't want to be like them," she admitted softly. "I don't want to lose myself in this fight." Her other friend, Tasha, spoke up. "Then don't. You can fight for justice without destroying everything in your path. You can be the bigger person." Elena looked around at her friends, their support and love giving her the clarity she needed. She had spent years building herself up from the ashes of her family's downfall, and she wasn't going to let that turn her into someone she didn't recognize. The courthouse was buzzing with anticipation as the final day of the trial arrived. Elena stood at the front of the courtroom, her heart pounding as she prepared to present the evidence. Aaron sat in the back, watching her with a mixture of hope and fear. As the proceedings began, Elena took a deep breath and made her choice. She presented the evidence, but she did so with care, exposing the truth without completely destroying Aaron's family. It was a delicate balance, but one she knew was the right path. When the verdict was finally read, the court ruled in favor of Elena and her client. The Bennett estate was lost, but the full extent of the family's corruption was not laid bare for the world to see. Aaron's family reputation was damaged, but not beyond repair. After the trial, Aaron approached Elena outside the courthouse, his expression filled with gratitude and relief. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For not going all the way. For giving me a chance to rebuild." Elena nodded, her emotions mixed. "I didn't do it for you, Aaron. I did it for myself. I'm not going to let this case define me." Aaron smiled sadly. "I know. But I'm still grateful." As Aaron walked away, Elena watched him go, a sense of closure settling over her. The battle was over, but the emotional scars remained. Still, she had won, not just the case, but her own inner fight to remain true to herself. Elena sat in her apartment, the soft glow of the sunset filtering through the windows. She sipped from a cup of tea, the warmth grounding her as she reflected on the events of the past few months. The trial had been grueling, both emotionally and professionally, but now that it was over, she finally had time to process everything that had happened. She thought about Aaron, the man she had once loved so deeply, the man who had broken her heart. Seeing him again had stirred up emotions she thought she had buried, but the truth was, they had never fully gone away. She had been so focused on winning the case, on seeking justice for her family, that she hadn't allowed herself to truly confront those feelings. Now, with the case behind her, she was left with the aftermath. She had won, but the victory felt hollow in some ways. The Bennett family was in ruins, their estate lost, and Aaron had paid the ultimate price for his family's sins. But was it enough? Had she truly gotten the closure she had been seeking all these years? As Elena sat there, her thoughts drifting, she realized that the answer was more complicated than she had anticipated. She had fought for justice, and she had won, but it had come at a cost, one that left her feeling both vindicated and unsettled. Aaron stood outside the now empty Bennett estate, the house that had been his family's legacy for generations. The gardens were overgrown, the windows boarded up, and the once grand structure stood as a haunting reminder of what had been lost. He walked through the grounds one last time, his footsteps echoing in the silence. His heart was heavy, filled with regret and sorrow for the choices he had made and the family he had trusted. But more than that, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for Elena, for giving him the chance to make amends, even if it hadn't been enough to save the estate. As he stood at the front gate, Aaron pulled a letter from his pocket, addressed to Elena. He had written it the night before, pouring his heart onto the page, apologizing for everything, his rejection, his family's betrayal, and the way he had hurt her all those years ago. He knew it couldn't erase the past, but he hoped it might offer some semblance of peace. Aaron placed the letter in the mailbox and walked away, leaving behind the ruins of his family's empire and the weight of his past. The next morning, Elena arrived at her law office feeling more confident than she had in years. The resolution of the Bennett case had lifted a burden she hadn't realized she had been carrying. For the first time in a long time, she felt free, free from the pain of the past, free from the anger she had harbored, and free to move forward with her life. Her assistant, Sarah, greeted her at the door. "You have a new client meeting in an hour," she said, handing Elena a folder. Elena nodded, smiling. "Perfect. I'm ready." She sat at her desk, flipping through the client's file, feeling a sense of control and purpose that had been missing for a while. The case had tested her in ways she hadn't expected, but it had also made her stronger. She had faced her past, confronted her pain, and come out the other side with a clearer sense of who she was and what she wanted. As the day progressed, Elena met with the new client, her confidence radiating through every interaction. She was back in her element, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Later that afternoon, Elena decided to take a walk through the park to clear her head. The air was crisp, the autumn leaves crunching beneath her feet as she strolled along the path. She hadn't taken the time to enjoy the little things in life for a while, and it felt good to simply be present. As she walked, she noticed a familiar face, an old acquaintance from law school, David, sitting on a bench reading a book. They had been close once, back when life was simpler and the future seemed wide open. "David?" Elena called out, walking over to him. He looked up, surprised but smiling. "Elena, wow, it's been a long time." They spent the next hour catching up, reminiscing about their law school days and the paths their lives had taken since then. As they talked, Elena felt a warmth growing inside her, a sense of possibility she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. As they parted ways, David gave her a lingering smile. "We should do this again sometime." Elena smiled back, feeling a spark of excitement. "I'd like that." That evening, Elena sat on her balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. She sipped a glass of wine, her mind drifting back over the past few months. The journey had been difficult, but it had also been necessary. She had confronted the man who had broken her heart, uncovered the truth about her family's downfall, and fought for justice in a way she never thought she could. But now, it was time to let go. The past no longer had a hold on her. She had done what she needed to do, and now she was ready to embrace whatever came next. As the last rays of the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena felt a sense of peace wash over her. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to face it. She was free, free from the pain, free from the anger, and free to move forward with her life. And that, she realized, was the greatest victory of all.